The Melbourne Metro Tunnel is due to open in 2025 and will be the most significant change to the structure of Melbourne's suburban railway network since the underground city loop opened in the early 1980s. Right now, in February 2024, trains are already running through the tunnel on test runs, and one of the stations, Arden, is pretty much complete. This video isn't going to be a detailed look at the tunnel itself, as, like most people, I haven't been down there yet. But we're going to take a bit of a look at how the opening of the tunnel will change the broader network and how much the benefits will spread to other lines. So, if you don't know this already, the Metro Tunnel is a 9-kilometre tunnel branching off the Sunbury line at South Kensington, running through new stations at Arden and Parkville. Arden is at the centre of a major urban renewal project, and Parkville is right next to Melbourne Uni and several large hospitals, currently only served by trams. The line then heads down to the CBD with new stations at State Library, which is basically an extension of Melbourne Central, and Town Hall, which is basically an extension of Flinders Street. In fact, in some of the earlier plans, these stations were just treated as extensions of those stations. It then continues south underneath St Kilda Road to another new station, Anzac, which is near the Shrine of Remembrance and creates a convenient interchange with St Kilda Road trams. The line then turns east and passes painfully close to the major station of South Yarra, but controversially has no platforms here, before emerging back into the daylight and joining up with the Pakenham and Cranbourne lines between South Yarra and Hawkesburn. The Metro Tunnel stations will have platform screen doors, and trains will run through in a mostly automated mode. Rather than traditional line-side signals, trains will operate on Communications-Based Train Control, CBTC. This allows trains to operate closer together and will also be used on parts of the above-ground corridor. In fact, it's already in operation between South Yarra and Clayton. The Metro Tunnel route will be operated exclusively by the purpose-built high-capacity metro trains, HCMTs, most of which are already in service, running on the Pakenham and Cranbourne lines, as well as a small number each day on the Sunbury line. So, when the tunnel opens in 2025, we know that Pakenham and Cranbourne trains will through-run with Sunbury, and the main benefits will be for those lines. But it will have some flow-on effects on other lines. In fact, the official government website for Victoria's Big Build claims major benefits for just about every line, so let's take a look at that. Currently, Pakenham and Cranbourne, which I'm just going to call the Dandenong lines from here on to save a few syllables, run into the city via South Yarra and Richmond, then run anti-clockwise around the city loop using the Caulfield tunnel, which doesn't really create any significant capacity constraint as no other lines currently use it. The Sunbury line currently comes in through North Melbourne, running around the city loop in the Northern Group tunnel, which changes direction depending on the time of day. The Sunbury line shares this tunnel with the rest of the Northern Group, the Craigieburn and Upfied lines, and because of the way the city loop is designed, that means trains from this entire group follow one another around the loop in a single track tunnel. So, unlike the situation with the Dandenong lines, this is a major capacity constraint. Once through running begins, there'll be more trains needed on the southeast side due to the two branches, so West Footscray Station has had a third platform added, allowing some trains to terminate there. The ultimate plan is to run trains on the airport line, if that ever gets built, through the Metro Tunnel as well, so it's possible the West Footscray trains would ultimately end up heading out there. Taking the Dandenong lines out of the loop will leave the Caulfield tunnel completely empty, so this space will be taken over by the Frankston Line, which currently through runs with the Werribee and Williamstown lines, collectively known as the Cross City Group. The Frankston Line did previously share the Caulfield loop with the Dandenong lines, but was taken out in 2021 to free up some capacity. As always when a route changes, moving back into the loop will benefit some passengers and disadvantage others, but the net benefit for Frankston is probably a good one. Currently, Dandenong trains run anti-clockwise around the loop only, which was implemented as part of some signalling modifications to allow the HCMT trains to run. However, the infrastructure does still allow clockwise operation, and given HCMTs will no longer be using this tunnel, there's no theoretical reason why the Frankston line couldn't go back to changing directions partway through the day, although my personal view is that this is best avoided for the sake of simplicity. The Big Build website claims a 15% increase in peak capacity for the Frankston line, although if that figure is accurate, I suspect it's got more to do with changes elsewhere on the line, such as the recently improved track layout at Cheltenham, which allows more efficient terminating moves. The shift back into the loop doesn't make much difference to capacity, given it's just changing from through running with some other lines to through running with itself. Frankston passengers bound for the Metro Tunnel will be able to change to the Dandenong lines at Caulfield, and vice versa for passengers heading to South Yarra, Richmond or the City Loop. However, unfortunately this isn't a cross-platform interchange and requires a trip down through the underpass, as well as leaving the paid area of the station. Because of the way our fare structure works, this won't affect the cost of your journey, but if lots of people start interchanging here, the ticket barriers will become a real bottleneck. So with Frankston back in the loop, the eastern half of the Cross City Group will be taken over by the Sandringham line, which will now through run with Werribee and Williamstown. The The website splashes around some very big numbers here, claiming a 48% peak capacity increase for Sandringham, which seems like a very unlikely figure to me. The only place to easily terminate trains on the Sandringham line is at Sandringham itself, which only has a single platform, and that's a much harder limit on frequency than anything the line does in the city, given it already has 2 platforms available at Flinders Street. The Metro Tunnel was originally going to include some additional changes around the network, including an extra terminating location somewhere on this line, but that part of the project has been de-scoped, and I suspect the numbers they're quoting for several of these lines haven't been adjusted to account for that. With the current arrangement, most Sandringham trains terminate at Flinders Street in the fairly inconveniently located platforms 12 and 13, with 13 being a dead end. It's likely these platforms will be completely redundant once Sandringham starts through running, but hopefully they'll keep them for extra flexibility anyway. A benefit for Sandringham passengers will certainly be the use of the more attractive and more centrally located platforms 8 and 9 once through running begins. On the other side of the cross-city group, the website claims a 24% peak capacity increase for Werribee Williamstown, which again I'm very sceptical about given the only real change here is which line they will run through with, and the Sandringham line is a lot more limited operationally than Frankston. It is interesting to see that they have coloured these lines in the current Sandringham line pink, indicating that is the colour which will be used for the whole cross-city group in the future, while Frankston will remain green. Likewise, it looks like Sunbury will get the Dandenong light blue, leaving the rest of the northern group yellow. Taking the Sunbury line out of the city loop will certainly free up some much-needed capacity for the Craigieburn and Upfield lines, which the website quotes as a probably believable 27% increase for Craigieburn and an almost certainly not believable 71% for Upfield. The Upfield line is limited by a long single-track section beyond Gowrie, and any major frequency increase will require either duplication or a new crossover at Gowrie to terminate some trains short. There was a proposal to do just that earlier in the project, however, from what I can tell, it doesn't seem to be going ahead at this stage. But whatever the actual numbers are, there will certainly be more space to cram additional trains on these lines into the Northern Loop Tunnel. For all the other suburban lines, that's the Clifton Hill and Burnley groups, there won't be any significant changes. Because the City Loop is 4 completely independent tunnels, the changes happening in the Caulfield and Northern Loops won't make any difference to trains in the Burnley and Clifton Hill tunnels. That doesn't stop the Big Build website from claiming some benefits though, listing time savings to the new stations at Parkville and Anzac as a specific benefit to each line, which is a pretty strange way of framing it. They've also listed this as a specific benefit to some V-Line routes, including the Northeast Corridor? Great news for our North American friends. On that topic, it's worth noting that the Northeast Line will actually be the only line with no direct connection to the Metro Tunnel, so any journey between the two will require 2 changes. All the other V-Line routes will connect directly to the Metro Tunnel route at Footscray, Flinders Street or Caulfield, but there won't be a direct connection from the tunnel to most V-Line coaches or the 2 interstate trains which depart from Southern Cross. The removal of the Dandenong lines from the City Loop will mean that the current above-ground part of this route through South Yarra and Richmond won't see any regular suburban trains, and will be used exclusively by V-Line's Gippsland line, which runs down the Pakenham line, along with a handful of daily freight trains. Over at South Kensington, the removal of the Sunbury line will leave the existing tracks from the tunnel entrance to North Melbourne Junction without any trains at all. Hopefully they'll remain available for use so trains can get direct access to the city if need be, but I don't know what the plan is here long term. With Sunbury gone from North Melbourne, the Upfield, Craigieburn and Werribee lines will all finally get a pair of platforms each, and won't have to share as much as they do now. Another big change, potentially, is going to be to the trams on St Kilda Road and Swanston Street. This is the busiest tram corridor in the world, and the Metro Tunnel will run underneath it from State Library to Anzac, hopefully reducing some pressure on the trams. However, while trains in the tunnel will be a faster option along here, they may not always beat the convenience of just boarding a tram at street level. The trams will still be more frequent, and getting down to platform level in the tunnels will take time, so it might not work out quicker for all journeys. Although the trains will offer much better accessibility, with most trams on the corridor still not offering level boarding. So the opening of the Metro Tunnel will make some pretty radical changes happen across the network, but maybe not quite to the extent being claimed. Where more capacity does become available, we'll have to wait and see how much that is actually taken advantage of with new timetables, especially when we consider that on many lines, increases to off-peak frequencies are what is really needed right now, and that is largely possible using existing infrastructure. All that said, I think the Metro Tunnel is a really impressive project, and it will certainly improve things for a lot of people travelling on the corridor running through it. Projects like this have a real potential to boost the overall image of the network. The new stations are going to be large, modern, impressive spaces, and I'm sure plenty of people will be curious to check them out, perhaps beyond those who are regular users of the system already. Thanks to my supporters on Patreon for helping keep this channel moving, and thanks for watching.